Everybody, and welcome to my channel. In this episode I'm going to be talking about David Fuller, who is also known as the Morgue Monster. Now, David Fuller was convicted of 2 murders and convicted of numerous other heinous crimes, and he is a necrophiliac, and he was doing things to bodies in the morgue, and that's why he's dubbed the monster in the morgue. But he got away with these murders for a number of years before things came on top for him. But later on in the video, I will talk about how he became friends with Wayne Couzens, who is another monster who was serving life without parole for the murder of Sarah Everard. But what I've done, I've gotten some clippings up of different newspaper articles and off Wiki just to get the facts right, and to make it a little bit more entertaining so you can actually see what I'm reading. So without further ado, people, let's get into it. So I'm just going to talk about who he actually is and where he was born. So David Fuller, born on the 4th of September 1954, is a convicted English murderer and necrophiliac. So he's now 69-year-old, and he's serving a life sentence, and he's currently housed in HMP Franklin, and this is where he's went on to meet Wayne Couzens. So in 2021 he was convicted of the murders of Wendy Nell, 25, and Caroline Pierce, 20, whom he strangled and assaulted after breaking into their homes months apart in 1987 in Royal Tunbridge Wells, Kent, and what became known as the Bedsit murders. The killer's DNA had been known since a cold case review in 2007, and analysis of the samples in the 2 cases would later prove that the murders were committed by the same unidentified perpetrator. Fuller was eventually identified as the perpetrator in 2020 when a match was made between his DNA and the samples from the case. When finally apprehended, Fuller also received 12 years for mortuary offences, having recorded himself abusing the bodies of more than 100 female corpses over the course of his employment as an electrician at the Kent and Sussex Hospital, also in Tunbridge Wells, and the Tunbridge Wells Hospital in nearby Pembury, which replaced it. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order on the 15th of December 2021, meaning that he will never be released from prison. In October 2021, Fuller was charged with an additional 16 offences committed at mortuaries in the now closed Kent and Sussex Hospital and its successor, the Tunbridge Wells Hospital at Pembury, between 2007 and 2020, and pleaded guilty to the charges on the 3rd of November 2022. He is imprisoned at HMP Franklin alongside other prisoners such as Wayne Couzens, who he's went on to befriend, and Michael Stone. Fuller was married 3 times. He was interested in birdwatching, cycling and photography. He was an unofficial photographer for London rock band Cutting Crew, and in 1985 accompanied them on tour with his second wife, Sally. So I'm going to go on to read a couple of more articles in different newspapers. So that there was just a brief description of what he's actually in prison for and what he was convicted of. But I'm just going to talk a bit more about what he actually done. And this is him here. This is the creepy morgue monster, as you can see by his picture there. And these are the 2 innocent victims, Wendy Nell and Caroline Pierce, who were only 25 and 20 at the time. The morgue monster David Fuller, who murdered 2 women, and as you can see, this word here, I'll not mention that word because it will be picked up by the automated service and it will be flagged up. So I'm just going to refer to it to S. who murdered 2 women and S abused at least 100 corpses in hospital mortuaries, will die behind bars after being handed a whole life sentence. The 67-year-old beat and strangled Wendy Nell and Caroline Pierce to death before S assaulting them in 2 separate attacks in Tunbridge Wells, Kent in 1987. The case became known as the Bedsit murders and one of the UK's longest unsolved double killings until a DNA breakthrough 33 years later led detectives to Fuller. So he went unnoticed for 33 years. So for someone to do this sort of act and kill 2 innocent lasses in 33 years, he's not done another murder. I think there'll be more murders coming to light because although he went on to work in the mortuary and go on to act out his sick fantasies, that's probably what's kept him at bay, because he's liking to be around dead bodies. But during a search of his home in the town of Heathfield, East Sussex, where he lived with his family, they found 4 hard drives stuck to the back of a cupboard containing a library of unimaginable S depravity. Duncan Atkinson QC prosecuting told jurors at Maidstone Crown Court they were both photographs and videos which showed the defendant abusing female corpses in the mortuaries of the 2 hospitals at which he worked. The judge, Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb, told Fuller he had no regard for the dignity of the dead. Passing sentence, she said, "You have spent the last 45 years living an outwardly mild and ordinary life. You were described as a man good under pressure, while in seclusion you committed acts of the deepest darkness." Now that is the depraved monster there. You became a vulture, picking your victims from among the dead within the hidden world of hospital mortuaries, which you were free to inhabit simply because you had a swipe card. So he didn't even work in the mortuaries, he was just an electrician that was actually letting himself in there. The depravity of what you did reveals your conscience is seared. You will spend every day of the rest of your life in prison. Fuller pleaded guilty to the murders after previously admitting manslaughter by diminished responsibility. Miss Nell was found dead in her apartment in Guildford Road on June the 23rd, 1987, while Miss Pierce was snatched 5 months later outside her home in Grosvenor Park on November the 24th. Now this fella sounds like the UK's Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was doing this sort of act, but he done it to round about 25 to 30 women, I think it was, or maybe it's even more. Her naked body was discovered in a water-filled dike at St. Mary in the Marsh on December the 15th. The senior judge described Fuller as a prowler and Miss Nell as a successful, happy and independent. Miss Pierce said she was a lively young woman when she was killed. Take a moment to think about these poor women that are no longer with us. Fuller also admitted 51 other offences, including 44 charges relating to 78 identified victims, including 3 children, in mortuaries between 2008 and November 2020. They include, as you can see by that word there, I'm not going to say it, of a corpse possessing an extreme image involving interferences with a corpse and taking indecent images. He filmed himself carrying out the attacks inside the now closed Kent and Sussex Hospital and the Tunbridge Wells Hospital in Pembury, where he worked in an electrician maintenance roles since 1989. Fuller generally worked the late shift from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. and as a maintenance supervisor had an access all areas pass with a swipe card he could use to go anywhere, including the mortuary. He was often alone in the morgue after its staff left for their day shifts and would disappear into areas not covered by the cameras. But his own footage documenting his depraved activities, along with a detailed log of names and ages which he kept in a notebook, helped police identify nearly 80 victims. Investigators said that in total they had detected at least 102 victims, but admitted all their identities may never be known. They included a 9-year-old girl, 2 16-year-olds, and a woman aged 100. Senior Crown Prosecution Service prosecutor Libby Clark said the victims' families were in utter disbelief when they were told what Fuller had done. She said some of the victims will have been dead for a good many years, but others will not have been, and families are just getting used to it. Going through that cycle of grief and now receiving devastating news of this man's conduct towards their loved ones when they were dead. The mother of 9-year-old girl faced Fuller in court as she said, "My pain, the guilt that I feel because I left her in that hospital, the ones that meant to be in a safe place. I have nothing, no way of closure. How will I make it up to her? How will I stand by her side now? And how will I nurse that little body that has been ruined and disrespected by that vile man? I am standing up for her now in front of him. It will haunt me forever and the rest of my life." She added, "I will go home tonight like every night and see the abuse that that man has done to my baby. That man has taken everything from me." A statement from the family of 100-year-old woman said, "My mother should have been safe at the mortuary, and clearly she was not. She should never have had to have such an awful thing done to her. We have to live with this for the rest of our lives, and I know we will all struggle with it." The daughter of another woman told Fuller, "You have proved with your depravity that monsters are very real. You are the absolute worst of humanity, preying on those who could not fight back." And the widower of another victim told him, "David, when you are serving your time behind bars, think carefully about what you have done and thank your lucky stars that I am not sharing a cell with you." Ms. Clark said, "David Fuller's deeply distressing crimes are unlike any other I have encountered in my career and unprecedented in British legal history. No British court has ever seen abuse on this scale against the dead before, and I have no doubt he will be still offending to this day had it not been for this painstaking investigation and prosecution. The government has announced an inquiry into how Fuller went undetected and promised to look at the maximum sentence for necrophilia, which is currently 2 years in jail. So if he hadn't have been imprisoned for these other murders, and he had only been caught for doing these deprived crimes, he would have only gotten 2 years. It's absolutely ridiculous. It needs to be increased because that man, it doesn't matter whether they're dead or alive, abusing bodies like that is just unspeakable. He's an absolute depraved, sick sexual predator. Health Secretary Sajid Javid said, "This is a profoundly distressing case. While nothing can undo the damage that has been done, David Fuller has today been brought to justice for this unspeakable crimes. I would like to reiterate my apologies to the friends and families of all the victims for that took place. We are taking action to ensure nothing like this ever happens again." Now, as you can see by that, and that sick, depraved little man and what he's went and done, what's this one say? Asked if Fuller may have committed other crimes. This is what I was on about before. Excuse me. Asked if Fuller may have committed other crimes and if police are still investigating the Morgue monster, Detective Chief Superintendent Paul Fothering said outside court, "We are. David Fuller to go to the level of offending that he did against Wendy and Caroline in 1987, it must be unthinkable that there are other offences that he's committed before or even afterwards. Like I said, if he's done them 2 murders 30 odd years ago, can he have hidden his depravity and went on and not committed any more murders in that time? I think there'll be more murders come to light when it's investigated more. So it says here, we're going to be working on those and reviewing those now. So I think there's every chance that he's committed other offences. There's no evidence at the moment that he has, but we're absolutely going to dig into it and get to the bottom of it. Kent Police received almost 750 calls from neighbours of the public to its dedicated appeal line set up after Fuller changed his double murder pleas to guilty. But obviously when he's been found guilty, when he's pled guilty and he's been sentenced to life without parole, and he's went up into Franklin prison, where he's went on to meet, where's he at? I think it was a picture of him on here somewhere, where he's went on to meet there Wayne Couzens, the police officer, or the serving police officer at the time, who went on to kill Sarah Everard, raped and murdered her, took her off the streets, put her in his car, pretended he was arresting her, and went on to kill her. So two of Britain's most twisted murderers have become firm friends behind bars. Now, I've done a video previously, I've done a couple of videos on Wayne Couzens, because I do a whole life series, which I'll be putting this one into the whole life series, where people that are doing life without parole. I've done about 20 up till now. There's about 100 altogether, and there's still 70 people serving the sentence, and these are two of them who've actually now become friends in Franklin prison, and they're living together. On the video that I've done on him previously, I've done a one on talking about his crime, and I've also done a one talking about what happens to police officers in prison. So at some point throughout his sentence, he will become attacked, and so will David Fuller, the Morgue monster, because people like this are #1 priority for target attacks in prison. Even on the VP wings, which is the vulnerable prisoner wing, where the beasts go, they will become under attack at some point throughout the sentence, because they can't be kept protected 24/7. Right. So a source told how the pair bonded after being banged up on the same wing at HMP Franklin in Brasside, County Durham. He said, "We call them the odd couple." Former Met Officer Couzens, who worked as a mechanic before he joined the police, enjoys chats with electrician Fuller, who like him lived in Kent. Our source said they know some of the same areas from back in the day. The idea of them swapping stories churns my stomach. Couzens, 48, was handed a whole life tariff last year after using his job as a cover-up to kidnap and, that word there, marketing worker Sarah in Clapham, South London. Her murder in March 2021 sparked a national outcry and a fresh focus on ending violence against women. Fuller, 67, who I've just mentioned, I'll not go into that. So Fuller was given a sentence without parole, a life without parole, the same as Couzens, and that is why they're becoming friends in prison. So, sorry, just seeing what else this says here, because that goes into another story, that one. But Couzens and Fuller are not the first friends to become friends behind bars. So obviously that's the story that I'm talking about. David Fuller mentioning his story, because he's serving life without parole, and that he's met Wayne Couzens in prison. But as it says here, they're not the first ones or the first monsters to become friends behind bars. So I'll just talk a little bit about them. So Karen Matthews in 2008 kidnapped her own daughter Shannon in a bid to get a 50 grand cash reward, struck up a friendship with convicted killer Bernadette McNeely in jail. The pair bonded after being banged up together at Foston Hall Prison in Derbyshire, and even kept in touch with Matthews when Matthews was free during her 8-year sentence. Murderer McNeely was released in 2015. She spent 21 years behind bars for setting fire to 16-year-old Suzanne Kappa in 1992. Meanwhile, paedophile Roy Whiten, 63, who murdered schoolgirl Sarah Payne in 2000, is said to have become pals with child rapist Sidney Cook, 94, at HMP Wakefield. And black cab rapist John Warboy, 64, is said to have become friendly with Millie Dowler killer Levi Belfield. A spokesman for the prison service said last night, "We do not comment on individual prisoners." So that is the story of David Fuller, who is dubbed the monster in the morgue. Now there is a series just come out, I believe. I haven't actually watched it yet, but I might watch it and give it a breakdown and let you know what I think of it. But like it says, they're unlikely people who have become friends, or unlikely monsters that have become friends in prison. It's not unusual for that because, like I've mentioned, in Franklin Prison, it's full of monsters now, and that's become known as Monster Mansion. Even though Wakefield Prison is the original Monster Mansion, Franklin has become known as that because of the likes of him, David Fuller, Wayne Couzens, Levi Belfield, Ian Huntley. The worst of the worst is in that prison at the moment, and that's why it's now become known as Monster Mansion. But I hope you enjoyed that, people. I will be doing more content soon. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please go down, double check, click that subscribe button. It costs nothing to subscribe to my channel. And if you are subscribed, please make sure you've hit that notification bell so you don't miss another upload. But again, I've got loads of content coming up. I've got about 400 videos that I've done previously. If you haven't seen them all, go back, give them a watch. There's plenty there for you to get through. And again, as always, thanks for watching. And if you are enjoying it, remember to comment, like, and subscribe. Take care, people. Enjoy the rest of your day.